If suddenly you started to shrink in size, how long would it be until you became as small as a particle of dust? Why would things look different to your eyes? And why should you stay away from these grabby things? Today, you'll be scaling down by 1 centimeter every second, from human-sized all the way down to the size of a subatomic particle. Okay, quick brain fact. Did you know that curiosity is one of the only emotions that actually rewires your brain in real time? The moment you lean in to understand something, like you are right now, your neurons start building new pathways. When you watch curiosity-fueled content like this, your brain treats it like active learning, decoding and making sense of new ideas just like it does when you solve a puzzle. So, watching our shows is literally good for your brain. Well, that's why we launched the Popular Science Fast channel, where you can stream all our shows 24/7. Tune in any time of day and you'll find mind-bending science from us and from some of the world's leading creators, including NASA's spaceflight, Hacksmith, and Complexly, plus live rocket launches, documentaries, and deep dive specials. It's basically a non-stop feed of curiosity, always on, always learning. We're currently available on 10 different platforms, including Vizio, Roku, and Plex, but we're just getting started. We're reaching tens of millions of homes and streaming devices all over the globe, and that audience keeps growing every month. And the channel just keeps evolving. We're adding brand new series and specials monthly, from breakthroughs in tech to space exploration coverage you can watch live. It's a front row seat to the new space race, alongside a 150-year-old legacy of science storytelling, now being brought to streaming for the first time. So, if you ever finish one of these streams and still want more, well, you don't have to wait. You can jump straight into Popular Science and keep that curiosity going. It's there 24/7, ready whenever your brain wants its next aha moment. Your shrinking adventure would begin suddenly. You'd start at an average adult size. Your mass, your voice, and your grip strength would all feel normal. Whoa, but after just 10 seconds, you drop 10 centimeters in height. That's about 4 inches. The fun part is, your weight would be falling faster than your muscle force, so you'd feel deceptively springy. Now, after 20 seconds, you'd be down another 10 centimeters. You'd be breathing just a little faster and shallower. That's because your lungs would start shrinking too. All of these changes would be pretty subtle, so you might not realize what was happening at first. But now, a whole minute has gone by and you've shrunk to the size of a child. Yeah, you'd be 60 centimeters or 24 inches shorter than where you started from. That you would notice. At this point, you'd have lost 1/3 of your mass. You may feel lighter and more agile, but you'd also be losing heat fast, so even a small draft would be pretty chilly to you. As you gasp, wondering what's happening to you, you'll hear a tiny, high-pitched voice. Oh, that's you. Your voice will get higher because your vocal cords will be shrinking down with you. And so would your other organs.
No!
Keeping warmer would be harder, and you'd be inhaling far fewer air molecules. Metabolically, you'd be turning into a small mammal. Now, if your clothes didn't shrink at the same rate as you, which they wouldn't, they'd become a hazard. Your sleeves would swallow your hands and your pants would fall down. Soon, you'd be running around this big room naked. But for the sake of our viewers, we're going to keep this story PG and make your clothes shrink along with you. In just 90 seconds, you'd be less than 1 meter in height. That's 3'4", like a 4-year-old. The furniture would tower above you. Your field of view would be so much lower that you'd see things you haven't noticed since you were a kid. After 2 minutes, you'd have lost 120 centimeters. That's 4 feet. The pitch of your voice would rise higher, and you wouldn't just look like a child, you'd sound like one too. And here's a new superpower. Your ear canal resonance would shift up, so you'd hear higher frequencies that you couldn't catch as an adult. Hopefully your survival instinct kicks in fast, because you'd be light enough now that a moderate gust of wind could knock you over. If a house cat wandered into the room, it would look more like a tiger. It would pose a real danger. 2.5 minutes into this scenario, you'd only be 30 centimeters tall. That's 1 foot. At this point, you'd be the same size as a domestic cat, only you wouldn't feel as strong. The good news is because you shed all that weight, even jumping down from a tabletop wouldn't hurt you. Pretty soon, things will get way more interesting, and you'll enter a world you've never seen before. Yeah, just over 8 minutes into this journey, you'll be in a world of proteins and molecules. But for now, after 170 seconds of shrinking, you'd only be 10 centimeters tall. That's 4 inches, twice as big as a mouse. Insects would be scary. A cockroach would seem as large as a dog relative to you. And you wouldn't recognize the environment around you. Every speck of dust on the floor would be like a rock. And what looked like ordinary dust when viewed from your regular height might reveal itself as a colony of microscopic particles and tiny creatures. Okay, after 3 minutes of your downsizing journey, you'd be roughly 1 centimeter or 3/8 of an inch tall. Now, you'd be the same size as a large insect. And to anyone regular sized, you've basically become a bug. Try not to get yourself squished. At this size, grooves in the floorboards would look like trenches, and carpet fibers would rise like dense bamboo. The air would feel different, almost syrupy. Now, it's not because the air down there is different, it's because now you'd be so small that you'd feel air resistance pushing against your every step. Right about now, you'd be entering the microscopic world. This ride is about to get wild. After you passed the 3-minute mark, you'd be a mere 1 millimeter in height. That's 1/25th of an inch. You'd be the same height as a micro SD card. Now, you'd see dust mites moving like stubby spined bulldozers through the carpet forest. They'd be half your current size. And other insects would seem like giants. An ant would tower above you 5 times your size. You'd be so tiny and frail that even your own breath would shove you backwards. You could slip into a keyhole, disappear beneath a floorboard seam, or, just get inhaled like a speck of dust. Soon, you'd slip below the threshold of what your eyes can see as you're about to enter the realm of microbes and cells. Okay, you've been shrinking for 4 minutes, and now you'd be about as tall as a strand of human hair is wide. The world wouldn't look the same to you from the height of 100 micrometers, and the world wouldn't even see you, not without a microscope. Ooh, look, that living jelly puddle in front of you is an amoeba. An amoeba is a tiny living organism made of just one single cell. Scientists call it a unicellular eukaryote. Now, it might just have one cell, but it's a complex cell with a nucleus and organelles. This tiny creature eats its food by hugging and absorbing it. The largest amoeba are about the same size as you are now, so watch out. Do not let it hug you. And definitely don't get too close to paramecium. These guys, just like amoebas, are single-celled, only now they'd be 3 times your size. Paramecia are super fast, too. They can swim at 2 millimeters per second, which at your scale would feel astonishingly like super speed. Lucky for you, they can only live in water, so just try to avoid the water drops. I mean, that's good advice for you at this point anyway, considering your size. This microscopic world would be so new and exciting. Like that large bear-looking creature? That's a tardigrade, or literally a microscopic water bear. These are awesome. Not only do they look very plump and friendly, but they're also some of the most resilient organisms on the planet. Tardigrades can survive anything like freezing temperatures, crushing pressures, and even the vacuum of space. But even though they look friendly, you better get out of their way now. Not only would you be tiny and invisible to the naked eye, but your own eyes wouldn't see things the same anymore. Right now, you'd be about the same size as the wavelength of visible light. For you, everything would look like a blurry haze, and all the colors would start to fade. In this new microscopic world, you'd even walk differently. The gravity would feel weaker, and you could walk up a water droplet. The capillary forces would support your tiny weight so you wouldn't fall. Yeah, walking on water is a thing when you're this tiny. 5 minutes after the start of your shrinking journey, you'd see a forest of mold spores and fungal hyphae around you. And you'd start seeing some of the largest bacteria too. But it's time to shrink even more. After 6 minutes of shrinking, you'd be as small as a human cell. Those white blobs in front of you now, well, those would be your white blood cells. And the red ones? You guessed it, red blood cells. Being inside a human blood vessel would be like surfing on blood cells. Watch out for those white cells. Oof. Those bumpy spheres are covered with grabby, arm-like receptors ready to capture and engulf bacteria at any moment. Now, if you were on the surface of human skin, the pores would look like giant craters on an alien planet. You'd start seeing organelles inside cells. These little structures would be the size of a pumpkin back when you were regular sized. At this scale, your nervous cells, or neurons, would look like giant trees branching axons and dendrites instead of tree branches. Once you've shrunk down to the size of half a micrometer, that's bigger than half a micrometer, you could start wandering around inside a human cell, exploring the vast, crowded warehouse of organelles and the cell's nucleus. But let's keep shrinking. Things are about to get submicroscopic. After 9 long minutes, you'd be just one nanometer tall. That's 1/1000th of a meter. Now, you'd be on the same scale as small molecules and even large atoms. This little guy is a single molecule of carbon, only 3 times smaller than you. You yourself would be just 5 to 10 atoms in height, but you wouldn't really see anything down here with your eyes. That's because now you'd be smaller than the shortest wavelengths of visible light. But you can touch the things around you. Atoms would give you a fuzzy resistance kind of feeling. That would be the electrons creating electromagnetic forces inside an atom. The atomic nucleus, that's the core of an atom, would still be far smaller. That tiny thing is only 1 femtometer in diameter. Yeah, you ever heard of that measurement? I haven't. That's 1/1000th of the size that I am right now. Okay, after 10 minutes of continuous shrinking, you'd finally be the same size as an atom. This is around the time when the laws of physics get out of hand. You're now in the quantum world. The very concept of having a consistent shape or seeing in a usual way would break down. Not that you could see anything anyway. Everything around you would be vibrating. An atom next to you might suddenly swap places with another. That's called a quantum jump. Radiation at this scale is deadly for larger creatures, but to you, it's just part of the environment. A stray X-ray photon might blast through, larger than you are, maybe carrying you with it like a leaf in a hurricane. The subatomic world of protons, neutrons, and quarks is beyond tiny. At this scale, you would no longer be a separate being. You'd be part of the atomic lattice. You might even bind into a molecule. That would be the end of your journey. You yourself become a building block, an atom that makes up a molecule that makes up something bigger, like a regular-sized you.
Commence shrinking in 3.
What if you could shrink yourself down to 1 millimeter tall? About the size of a frog's egg. Actually, no. Too many creepy crawly predators. Let's go smaller. What if you shrunk to 10 micrometers? The size of an animal cell. Yeah, that's pretty cool, but I think we can go even smaller. How about 100 nanometers? The size of a virus. That's better, but we're not in the mood to be swallowed by white blood cells, so let's keep going. What if you shrunk to 1 angstrom, the size of the atom? Oh yeah, I think we have a winner. If you shrunk to the size of an atom, would it be a fantastic voyage or a death sentence? How would you survive being shrunk to the atomic level? And how could you pull it off in the first place? This is What If, and here's what would happen if you could shrink to the size of an atom. From Gulliver's Travels to Alice in Wonderland to Ant-Man, the idea of shrinking has fascinated us for a long time. The atom, in all its splendor, is tiny. I mean, really, really tiny. Measuring in at 1 angstrom. To put that in perspective, if you were to blow up an atom 1 billion times, it would only get as big as a tennis ball. While shrinking seems like it would be an amazing superpower, it would actually be a deadly fight for survival. The first hurdle you're going to have to deal with is your mass. If you shrunk without changing your mass, there would be so much compression that for an ant-sized person, the pressure underneath your tiny feet would be 10,000 times greater than at your normal size. It would be like a single ant-sized leg pushing down 70 kilograms on each step. Next, you would have to deal with your body turning against you. Your new, smaller size will affect almost every aspect of your biology. For example, if you shrunk to be approximately 2.5 centimeters tall, the surface area of your body through which you lose heat would decrease about 5,000 times. Your lung area would be 5,000 times smaller, but you could still get the supply of oxygen you need. The way you extract oxygen from the air is dependent on the surface area of your lungs. As you get smaller, the area of your lungs is larger than the volume of your lungs, which means there's more than enough air to go around. But you're not out of the woods yet. You'd need to provide your body with more fuel, a lot more fuel. This is because the rate at which you produce heat is proportional to the mass of your body. The only way to generate more heat is to increase your metabolic rate dramatically. This means you have to eat non-stop as the food needs to be digested in order to produce heat. You'd have to eat as much food as your body weighs every day just to stay alive. And this is just for the 2.5 centimeter version of you. You'll have even more dangers to face when you're atom-sized. During your shrinking process, you'll notice the world getting bigger and then darker. It's estimated that if you decreased in size to approximately 1/10,000th of your size, the lenses in your eyes would stop working in just visible light. Or that may just be you passing out. When you take the big step of squeezing your feet into microscopic shoes, one single oxygen molecule will look like Mount Everest to you. Yeah, you're literally smaller than an oxygen molecule. How long can you hold your breath? So, if you feel up to the challenge, could you even pull this off? The big problem with shrinking down to the size of an atom is that the atoms in your body can't be made any smaller. And your body contains more atoms than the number of stars we can see in the universe. You'd have to remove some excess baggage. Is it possible to remove the atoms in your body? Well, imagine a mosaic image, a picture made entirely out of smaller pictures. Much like these images, our body consists of DNA, built up by molecules consisting of atoms. If you started removing pictures from your mosaic image, you might be able to remove a few and still see a resemblance to the original, but there is a limit. After a while, the image would no longer make sense. This is also true of DNA. We might be able to remove atoms from the molecules building up the DNA, but eventually we'd reach a limit and make a mess of your human body. So, until you solve that problem, no shrinking for you. But if you manage to conquer all the challenges, you would be able to experience the insane world of quantum mechanics. If you could learn to live in this environment, you could have a blast, tunneling and jumping through impenetrable barriers on your path to chart the microverse. Truth be told, though, it's probably easier living at the size we are. Mostly because we don't have to deal with things like giant spiders.
What if humans became as big as dinosaurs? Could the consequences be as astronomical as the asteroid that wiped out these prehistoric beasts? Would it be a world-ending event? Even though we think of dinosaurs as huge, killer monsters, many of them were quite small, like the Microraptor. This guy is the smallest known dinosaur. He was
found in China about 125 million years ago.
Chase, hey, I'm talking. You're just demonstrating.
Oh, right, okay. Right. Go ahead.
This dinosaur was only 30 centimeters tall and weighed less than a kilogram, making it the same size as a Subway sandwich or a 2-liter soda. The Microraptor would have been the perfect lunch. It had wings with a similar soaring mechanism to a flying squirrel, but it couldn't actually fly. It could glide and snatch insects out of midair. Now, if all humans shrunk to the same height as this cute little beast, we'd be 18% of our current size. Too small to reach a door handle and too big to crawl through a crack. You'd basically be trapped in your house until someone came to rescue you. And seeing as no emergency service workers would be able to drive their cars or operate any machinery at this size, your best chance of rescue would probably be by 3 people stacked in a trench coat. Okay, let's say you left your house and went for a casual stroll down the sidewalk. Well, look out. At this size, you're at the bottom of the food chain, pal. Those city pigeons? Dangerous. And the rats and cockroaches you were already afraid of when you were normal sized, now they're your #1 predators. Battling a rat now would be the equivalent of battling a tiger. Your odds would not be good. But if humans had wings like the Microraptor, we'd be able to soar through the air and evade our new predators. However, with our body composition and our bone density, we'd likely shatter an ankle or two every time we landed. So that wouldn't be much fun. On the plus side, we'd eat way less, although not as little as you might think. Even though your body would be around 80% smaller, you'd still have to eat 35% of the calories you need today. That's because, according to Kleiber's law, your metabolic rate slows down as your body becomes smaller. That means your small body would need proportionally more energy per kilogram to maintain your basic physiological processes. you'd need to constantly be snacking, which honestly, I don't know if I could snack any more constantly than I already do right now. The same with this guy.
Chase.
Hi, sorry. Didn't know you'd be back so soon.
Okay, so humans being the size of microraptors would be pretty inconvenient, but not necessarily disastrous. Let's upgrade ourselves a little bit. The Utah raptor was found in, get this, Utah. They really need to get more creative with these names. This dinosaur stood 1.8 meters high and was the inspiration for Jurassic Park's velociraptors. Actual velociraptors are only as tall as a turkey, which, doesn't read well on screen. If all humans became the size of a Utah raptor, well, not much would change, except that men could stop finally lying on their dating profiles.
Just by the way, I've never lied about that. I'm 6'2", and that's 1.88 meters for my metric girlies.
Yeah, sure, Chase. The Utah raptor is 6 feet flat, and it looks like you're missing a few inches.
Fine, whatever, okay, I'm 5'11"-ish.
You're still lying. But once we became the size of a Utah raptor, well, no one will be 5'11" anymore.
Why would I care?
Overall, we'll be healthier, as scientists have discovered that taller people have lower chances of cardiovascular illnesses, but only up to a point. If humans suddenly became as big as one of the larger dinosaurs, like the Triceratops, we'd be shooting up to 2.8 meters tall. Sure, you'd be able to reach any shelf at the grocery store, but your heart would be struggling to pump enough blood to all parts of your body. And your legs and lower back will be holding up about 130 additional kilograms, so you'd have constant joint pain. You'd still be able to fit into your home, although you'd be smashing your head into plenty more door frames. At that height, you'd be better off losing your bipedalism and start walking on all fours or crawling on the ground baby style. Now, obviously, you're wondering what would happen if we grew to be as big as the biggest, baddest dinosaur of them all,
The Tyrannosaurus Rex.
This terrifying monster stood 3.7 meters high, a lethal killing machine. If humans were that tall, we'd hardly be lethal. In fact, we'd be quite the opposite. There's not an easy way to say this, so here it is. At the size of a T-Rex, we'd be very dumb.
Yeah, if you didn't think it was possible for people to be dumber, then you think of it again.
Your brain would grow proportionally to your body. That means the electrical signals in your brain would need to travel a longer distance, while the speed of those signals would stay the same. Basically, your reaction time would be 2 times slower than it is now. So it's pretty hard to be a deadly predator when your brain is processing while your prey is already running away. And remember all those joint issues you had at 2.8 meters? Well, at 3.7 meters tall, you'd need leg braces and walking canes. And you might be in so much pain that you'd need to use a wheelchair to move around. The only positive here is that your throat cavity would increase and make your voice deeper. That's right.
We don't have the sweet, relaxing tones of Morgan Freeman.
And your what if narration would be so much better. Almost makes the joint pain worth it.
Okay, let's kick it up a few notches, because the T-Rex wasn't the largest dinosaur out there, not even close. The absolute tallest known dinosaur was the Sauroposeidon. Just like his namesake, the Greek god of the ocean, this dinosaur could shake the earth with just one big footstep.
We may have a problem here. This thing doesn't fit on the screen. It is pretty big.
The Sauroposeidon was so big that when scientists first discovered its fossil, they thought it was a petrified tree trunk. I mean, with a height of 18 meters, that's a pretty understandable mistake.
I mean, the neck alone accounts for over half its height. Isn't that insane?
Yes, please, just keep demonstrating.
Fine. Oh,
Oh well, there goes Chase. So sad. Where were we? All right, if humans became as tall as the Sauroposeidon, the world would see infinitely more destruction than the T-Rex-sized humans could ever dream to cause. Imagine 8 billion people suddenly becoming 10 times our size. We'd rip through our cars and crash straight through ceilings. And that's if every skyscraper wasn't already crumbling from structural damage, because every single one of us would weigh over 80,000 kilograms. No building foundation is built to accommodate that kind of weight. If you live in an urban area, good luck. Either your head is busting through your apartment ceiling or your building is collapsing beneath you. Suburbanites wouldn't have it much better. Sure, you won't be crushed by a falling skyscraper or one of the dozens of tenants above you, but your musculoskeleton system wouldn't be equipped to carry your own weight. I mean, unless you're already lifting 10 times your body weight. Even the strongest bodybuilders wouldn't be able to stand up. And if that's not enough, your heart wouldn't be strong enough to counteract gravity and would stop pumping blood to your brain. That's right, you're looking at immediate brain failure and imminent death. Evolution made us pretty perfect, so the next time you're feeling insecure about your height, well, just be grateful that you're not 18 meters tall. And Chase? Well, he shouldn't have stood too close to the largest dinosaur in the history of dinosaurs.
oh.
But don't worry about him. He'll respawn somewhere and be all ready for his next adventure.
They can endure the cold reaches of space, go without food or water for up to 30 years, and are nearly indestructible. But they're like really tiny, so there's not a whole lot we can do with them. However, what if tardigrades were the size of humans? How could we use them? Would we live in harmony? Or are we no longer at the top of the food chain? This is What If, and here's what would happen if tardigrades were the size of humans. This is a tardigrade.
You can call me Tardy, but I'm always on time.
Yeah.
Kinda looks like an 8-legged bear, doesn't it? Well, an 8-legged bear from your nightmares is more accurate. While only measuring in at 1.2 millimeters max, these guys are as tough as nails. Tardigrades are classified as extremophiles.
What a file?
This means that they can roll with the punches in whatever extreme environment they call home. They can go 30 years without food or water, thrive in an absolute zero or above boiling temperature, and survive in pressures 6 times that of our ocean's deepest trenches. These teeny tanks can thank a unique protein for their resiliency, known as DSUP, which is short for damage suppressor. So, what would life be like if tardigrades had a growth spurt? Well, picture this. You've got a nice little pond in your backyard. It's quaint, relaxing, and really brings the whole yard together. Well, freshwater sediments like your pond may have as many as 25,000 tardigrades per liter, or almost 100,000 of them per gallon. But now things aren't as cozy. Imagine taking a look out your window and seeing 25,000 human-sized tardigrades dogpiled in your backyard. Our planet would be swamped with giant tardigrades. Okay, there's got to be a plus side to this. Maybe we could use them for something. What if you rounded up a posse and went hunting for tardigrade? Could we use their hard outer hides to create protective wear and get some of that sweet, sweet D-sup for ourselves? Tardigrades are encased in a rugged, flexible cuticle. Imagine a cow with armor similar to the exoskeletons of grasshoppers. Maybe the military could use this pliable yet sturdy material for some heavy-duty tardigrade armor. Nah, those are some cool ideas, but remember what I said about them being extremophiles. Yeah, they're not going down that easy. They don't even care about things that would give humans a run for their money. Take droughts, for example. A dry environment might trigger a tardigrade to go into a cryptobiosis state. The tardigrade will squeeze all the water out of its body, retract its head and limbs, and roll up into a little ball and become dormant. This is known as a ton. When in this form, the tardigrade's metabolism slows to 0.01% of the normal rate, and it can maintain this halted state for decades until it again comes into contact with water.
What the? Hey, cut it out!
So now that they're asleep, you might be thinking it's the perfect time to attack. Well, we wouldn't recommend it. A giant angry tardigrade has 8 legs and 4 to 6 claws on each paw. Not to mention their dagger-like teeth that also make them ferocious killers. Now, thankfully, we don't have to worry about our planet being overrun by human-sized tardigrades, but that doesn't mean we can't still learn from them. Because they are so resilient, we could gain a thing or two from these tiny titans, such as how to develop more resilient crops by using their valuable D-sup protein. I guess we could count ourselves lucky that if tardigrades were the size of humans, they'd be like big, lumbering cows, so at least they wouldn't be flying around us, dive-bombing our heads.
Over 300 million years ago, before the age of giant dinosaurs, Earth was covered with giant insects. Imagine a world where dragonflies are the size of crows and millipedes are as long as cars. Welcome to the Carboniferous period. Why were insects so enormous during this time? What did oxygen have to do with it? And why did these insects go extinct? This is What If, and here's what the Earth looked like in the age of giant insects. The Carboniferous period was one of the most transformational periods in the history of Earth. The planet's land masses were beginning to form the supercontinent of Pangaea. Extensive swamps and warm, humid forests dominated the landscape. And giant insects weren't the only huge creatures roaming the planet. There was also a vast array of marine life, like early forms of sharks and a giant amphibian that would reach up to 6 feet long. Now, enough talking. Let's travel back in time, 300 million years ago, and dive into the Carboniferous Age. Now, the first thing you'd probably notice would be the giant insect-like creatures. One of the most iconic was the Meganeura. This insect resembled a modern-day dragonfly, except with a major twist. It had a wingspan of up to 75 centimeters. Yeah, scarier than that though, it was carnivorous, hunting down other insects and small amphibians. Hopefully it doesn't come for you. So that thing is in the sky, but on land, you'll have the Arthropleura. This millipede-like creature could grow up to 2.5 meters long. Luckily, it wouldn't go after you. It preferred munching on decomposing vegetation. Hey, before we talk more about these giant insects, there's another giant issue we need to worry about, and that's our planet's ecosystems and how important it is to help them. Stick around till the end of this video to check out an inspiring project from the folks over at Planet Wild.
Another creepy-looking insect was the Pulmonoscorpius. This was a giant scorpion that mostly roamed the swampier areas of Earth. They could grow 70 centimeters long. There were also giant cockroaches that grew to 10 centimeters, and mayflies with 45-centimeter wingspans. So it's safe to say that you'd have a lot to watch out for when you're wandering around in this period, but the question is, how did these insects get so big anyway? Well, you may have noticed as you've been hanging around in the Carboniferous age, you feel a lot more energetic and alert. Maybe you've had an easier time running around. This has to do with the oxygen levels in your current world. Research has estimated that the atmospheric oxygen levels were as high as 35% during this period. Compare that to the 21% we breathe today. Oxygen was one of the key factors in the gigantism found in insects at the time. But why would this make them so giant? Insects breathe differently from other creatures. Insects don't have a circulatory system to transport oxygen. Instead, it gets delivered directly to their tissues through a network of tiny tubes called the trachea. And the more oxygen in the atmosphere, the bigger these insects are. But there might be more reasons why the insects grew to this size. Another theory suggests that the insects were forced to grow so large due to oxygen toxicity. Yeah, as amazing as oxygen is, you can have too much of a good thing. Too much oxygen in your body can create what's known as free radicals. These are unstable molecules that can damage your cells and even damage your DNA. In the case of our insects, they were forced to grow this big. Otherwise, they'd suffer oxygen toxicity. Growing larger would slow down the rate of oxygen absorption, making it harder to suffer from too much oxygen. And the same could happen to you. The longer you hang out in this period, the higher oxygen levels will cause you to experience nausea, respiratory issues, and even some effects on your nervous system. Now, insects were arguably the stars of this age, but they weren't the only things to experience massive change during the Carboniferous period. This time was known as the Coal Age. That's because of the extensive coal beds that formed after ancient forests decayed. These coal beds are one of our main sources of energy. We're still using them today. And a lot of the fruits and veggies you find in the grocery store may be descendants of plants from over 300 million years ago. The Carboniferous period saw the evolution of the first seed-bearing plants, creating more diverse ecosystems than we'd ever seen before. Wait, what's that over there? Kinda looks like a dinosaur. Oh, hey, little guy. Turns out this wasn't a dino, just one of the first reptiles to ever appear. But if you stick around a couple of million more years, we'll enter the Mesozoic era, which was known as the Age of Dinosaurs. Speaking of change, the atmosphere was another part of Earth that evolved during this period. Earth had a lush, greenhouse-like climate when you first arrived, warm and humid temperatures to support the swampy forests we've been mucking about. But as the period progressed over millions of years, the climate transitioned to what's known as an icehouse Earth state. The temperature would get significantly lower and ice sheets would begin to form, mainly in the southern hemisphere. But why did this happen? Well, as we've been exploring this crazy period, Earth's land masses have been slowly coming together to form a supercontinent known as Pangaea. And when land masses this big start to move, it can seriously affect ocean currents, wind patterns, and global climate. Now, the rainforests have collapsed, which has led to a decline in the fauna and vegetation that were previously booming. And with the rainforests in decline, well, that means oxygen levels are being reduced. Before you know it, our massive insects start dying and going extinct.
Without the higher levels of oxygen available to support their size, well, these giant insects can't survive. The lower oxygen levels and a drier climate have created a habitat better suited for smaller insects. Also happening at this point, early reptiles are starting to take over, making the landscape way more difficult for the insects. 300 million years ago, Earth was the kingdom of giant insects. As time went on, they eventually went extinct, and then the dinosaurs entered the scene, but what if that never happened? What if these giant scorpions, worms, and dragonflies were still around today? And how did they go extinct in the first place? This is What If, and here's what would happen if the giant insects never went extinct. Okay, before we get to what our insects would be like today, well, first we need to go back. The Carboniferous period, also known as the Age of Oxygen, ran from 400 million years ago to 290 million years ago. Supersized dragonfly wannabes, also known as griffin flies, had wingspans up to 70 centimeters. They darted about, gobbling up smaller insects. The griffin flies were also 45 centimeters long. They had huge eyes and vision like a hawk. Their spiny legs helped them grab their prey. Then there was the Mazzatheros. It was 55 centimeters long and had 6 wings. It had 2 pairs of regular wings and an additional pair of winglets. But its scariest feature? It had a beak-like mouth equipped with a sucking pump. Like a vampire, it would pierce the tissues of plants and drink their juices. Maybe in the modern day, it would go after you. But we'll answer that later on. There was also the giant millipede, Arthropleura armata, entering the room at 2.5 meters in length. Luckily, this guy is strictly vegan. He dined on fruits, leaves, and seeds. And watch out for these massive scorpions as big as tennis rackets. You do not want to be on the wrong end of that stinger. But hold on, what made these insects grow so big in the first place? The answer lies in the weather the Earth was having at the time. At the beginning of this period, around 350 million years ago, it was warm. And as warm weather does, it encouraged the plants to grow. Around this time, oxygen levels in the atmosphere were about 20%, similar to what we have now on Earth. Fast forward 50 million years later, massive forests have taken over and swamps cover low-lying areas. Oxygen levels, well, they've skyrocketed to 35%. Now, the high levels of oxygen in the atmosphere made the insects big. But how exactly? Well, first you gotta look at how insects breathe. Insects don't have lungs like we do. They have a set of openings on their bodies called spiracles. These spiracle openings lead to a set of tubes called trachea, which run through the insects' bodies. Air enters the spiracles and passes through the trachea to deliver oxygen to all the cells in the insect's body. The more oxygen in the air, the more that can pass into the insect's body. Now, there was 35% oxygen in the air at that time, and this allowed insects to take in more oxygen, which allowed them to grow bigger. But then, 150 million years ago, something changed. Oxygen levels went up, but insect size went down. Why? Because a ruthless killer of insects arrived on the scene. Birds, which are, as you know, flying dinosaurs. These birds feasted on insects. They looked at the giant griffin flies and salivated, and the bigger the insect, the more likely it was to get eaten by a bird. So, insect evolutionary survival strategy was to get small and nimble. Large insects went extinct and the smaller ones survived. Okay, so now that we know what happened to the giant insects, was there a way they could have avoided extinction? Well, the easiest way would be for the oxygen levels to go back up to 35%. Okay, the insects would get larger, but large insects would still be hunted by birds, which are in most cases stronger. So our insects need some better survival strategies. Let's look at the largest insects we have today, one of them being the weta. It's 10 centimeters long and has been around since even before the dinosaurs. So how has it survived? By getting an island of its own. In the wettest case, New Zealand. It lived here for millions of years without having to worry about any predators. But as a long-term survival strategy, it hasn't exactly worked out. Predators eventually came to New Zealand, and wettas now live in the Auckland Zoo. Okay, we need a better option for our giant insects. How about a supercharged stealth reproduction strategy, like the cicadas? After mating, the female cicada lays nearly 400 eggs. These eggs hatch in about 6 to 8 weeks, and the young nymphs drop down, burrow into the ground, and don't come out for up to 17 years. That's definitely one way to do it. As an insect, if you make yourself scarce, no one can eat you. Maybe our giant prehistoric insects could try that. But where's the fun in spending most of your life underground? So there's one more option. We call it the chemical warfare strategy, and it's used by the lubber. Yeah, the lubber, a large grasshopper about 8 centimeters long. Now, that's much smaller than our Carboniferous ancestors, but it has some great survival strategies that we can use. Lubbers are great at picking up various poisons from plants like onions or garlic, and they then make a poisonous broth that they can use against predators. Think of it as nature's pepper spray. When they meet a predator, like a bird or a rat, they eject their poisonous broth, creating a chemical cloud. Predators then gag and spit out the lubbers. And if this fails, they've got an internal toxin lined up. An unsuspecting bird that eats a lubber will vomit, and then they'll never try to eat one again. Okay, so now let's see if giving these insects some survival tactics will work to stop them from going extinct. With the world at 35% oxygen and some internal toxins, yeah, the giant insects now fight off the birds. But what happens when the Chicxulub asteroid hits? That's the one that wiped out the dinosaurs. Well, it's actually a pretty good thing for our insects because the biggest predators are gone and there's plenty of swampy, dying material for our insects to feast on. But what would happen to mammal and human evolution? Would we even be around? Because today, if our air became 35% oxygen overnight, that would be toxic for us. It would cause coughing, difficulty breathing, and in severe cases, seizures and death. But then again, if apes and then humans evolved in 35% oxygen, then our bodies would have evolved to function in that environment. Our cells would be supercharged, producing even more energy with higher oxygen. We'd be super runners and super swimmers, breaking all of today's records. And our brains, which use 20% of the oxygen we breathe, would have evolved to grow even bigger and faster. Okay, so now it's time to return to the modern day. What does the world look like? Well, if you looked out your window during the summer, instead of just seeing different birds, you'd see giant griffin flies and 6-winged insects buzzing around. Would these giant arthropods attack you if you went outside? Well, during some period of evolution, there'd likely be a bunch of large winged insects that attacked humans, especially those pesky griffin flies. But remember, we humans are no pushovers. During different time periods, we'd have likely developed weapons to fight against these giant insects. During the Stone Age, maybe it was a sharp rock. Today, we'd probably have special bug sprays or zappers to fight them back. Sooner or later, just like the birds would have evolved to leave the giant insects alone, the giant insects would steer clear of us humans. Now, in addition to giant bugs flying around outside, we might have giant cockroaches and giant spiders as well. If these insects developed chemical defenses against predators, well, that could enable them to stay giant. But without these defenses, they'd be better off being small and nimble. So maybe mosquitoes would stay small. Ugh, with giant cockroaches, you'd need a whole new level of pest control to keep your kitchen safe. Now, if bugs were giant, would humans have evolved to be a whole lot bigger too? It's possible we'd be bigger. There's evidence to show that oxygen levels were rising from 15% to 19% when the dinosaurs first appeared, so there could be a link, but only if it gave us an evolutionary advantage. Now, talking about things getting bigger, one other danger would get bigger too: fires. everything would be highly combustible. The smallest spark would get a blaze going, and some of these fires might even be caused by giant insects. Take the bombardier beetle. When it's threatened, it mixes two chemicals from inside its abdomen to create an explosion. Well, a giant-sized bombardier beetle might set off a much bigger explosion, one that could start a forest fire. And in 35% oxygen, forests would burn frequently. In fact, plants would probably evolve to be more resistant to fires, or they would have strategies to grow back quicker after getting burnt. And you'd also notice that the world would be getting a lot louder. A mass of cicadas today are about as loud as a lawnmower, around 100 decibels. But giant cicadas? They'd probably make you go deaf. And you know what else is likely to happen? We'll probably have insects on the menu. We humans like to eat everything, so we'll definitely be looking to add these as a protein source. Once they're bigger, they're probably perfect for a meal. You'll have Meatless Monday and probably have Giant Insect Friday. Down under, they'll probably be throwing griffin flies on the barbie.
Trees are falling, ecosystems are collapsing, and our infrastructure is crumbling. Crops are failing, and water is scarce. Earth is becoming a dead planet. On the plus side, there's never been a better time to buy property. But who can think about real estate when they can't leave their own home, let alone get out of bed, let alone breathe? This is What If, and here's what would happen if the Earth was as big as the sun. Everyone knows the sun is big. I mean, look at it. And that's just how big it looks from about 150 million kilometers away. Just imagine what it would look like if you were standing next to it. Never mind. The sun accounts for 98% of the mass of our entire solar system. And compared to the densest planet, which is our very own planet Earth, the sun is more than 1,000,000 times more massive. In fact, it would take roughly 1,300,000 planet Earths to fill the entire sun. But what if it only took one? Earth would be a very different place if it were the same size as the sun. Just imagine our whole planet's topography being stretched out. Continents would expand, providing much-needed relief in places where overpopulation inhibits the quality of life. And owning a nice plot of land might actually be more affordable than it is on today's planet Earth. But now we'd also have to consider that every body of water on our planet would have more area to cover. This means that lakes, rivers, and even the oceans would be shallower, making them more susceptible to evaporation and potentially drying out. Marine life would undoubtedly suffer since shallower water would gain more heat from the sun, jeopardizing sea creatures that need colder water to survive. With other smaller water sources beginning to dry up, wildlife on land might have to relocate or travel much farther for fresh water, which would also put them at risk. Us humans would be in an equally precarious position. Not only would we probably start fighting over the limited fresh water that's available, our food crop yields would also start shrinking. Food crops need a certain amount of soil to grow in and to absorb the nutrients they need. If our world was as big as the sun, then, like the water, our soil would have to be spread out to cover a much larger space. Less soil would mean less food, while the demand for food would stay the same. There's also another issue that we haven't considered, which, when we factor it in, makes life on Earth pretty much impossible. Earth being the same size as the sun is hard enough to imagine, but when you consider a sun-sized Earth having the same mass as the sun, it doesn't only jeopardize our survival, it disrupts our entire solar system. Think about it. With the Earth as big as the sun, you'd pretty much lose the moon either way. But if a planet has more mass, it will also have a stronger gravitational pull. In this case, gravity on Earth would be 28 times as strong as it is now. We'll get to how this affects you in a moment, but first, let's look at the bigger picture. The reason why our solar system moves the way it does now is because the sun's mass is so great. Its gravitational pull forces other planets into its orbit. The sun currently has 98% of the mass in our entire solar system, but now the sun and the Earth would each have 49% of the mass in our solar system. Would this result in some sort of binary system in which the sun and the Earth orbited each other? How would this new rivalry affect the orbits of the other planets in our solar system? And would a significantly higher gravitational pull mean that Earth would get hit by a lot more asteroids? Well, there'd be a lot more to worry about than just asteroids. Our satellites would also probably crash down to Earth, while buildings and bridges would crumble and collapse under the increased gravitational pressure. Only thick trees that were low to the ground would remain standing, but it's unlikely that much else could shoulder the added weight. You would be significantly heavier, and you probably wouldn't be able to walk anywhere. Think about it. If you weigh 50 kilograms on Earth right now, it would feel like you weighed 1,400 kilograms on a sun-sized Earth. The cruel twist is that as gravity increases, time would slow down. So you might be able to live longer, but it would probably be a long life spent lying in bed with aches and pains. Luckily, we can wake up from this nightmare because the Earth will never be as big as the Sun. In fact, our planet is actually getting smaller. Our atmosphere leaks, and so we end up losing several hundred tons of mass to space every day. So take a nice deep breath and be glad it's that easy. It's not always a good idea to mess with proportions, and bigger definitely doesn't always mean better.
Ever feel like the Earth is just too small? Well, let's make it bigger. Much, much bigger. Welcome to a new Earth that is just as big as Jupiter. In what ways would Earth change? What things would stay the same? And how would this affect you? This is What If, and here's what would happen if Earth were the size of Jupiter. A super-Earth is a planet with a mass up to 10 times bigger than the Earth. But don't let the name deceive you. These super-Earths aren't anything like the Earth you know. These planets could be rocky or covered entirely in ice. They could even be gaseous like Neptune. But if you want to make the Earth as big as Jupiter, get ready to make a super, super, super Earth. While Earth as it exists now is much smaller than Jupiter, it is a pretty dense rock compared to the gas giant. Our new planet would be massive, about 1,300 times bigger than Earth today. And that's not the only thing that would be different. Jupiter has a radius about 11 times that of Earth. Get used to a little more gravity when you walk around. Yeah, 11 times more. So, if Earth was this huge, how soon would the gravity completely crush your body? This change in size would have enormous implications for you and all other life on Earth. The first thing you'd notice with 11 times the surface gravity is that you would weigh more. And there's not much a diet plan could do to change that. You'd be 11 times heavier than you are now. So, if you currently weigh 70 kilograms, well, get ready to start lugging a hefty 770 kilograms around. Would you even be strong enough to carry your own weight? Well, you'd be heavier than the world deadlifting record of 501 kilograms held by Game of Thrones star Hafthor Bjornsson. So, yeah, good luck. But if you were a couch potato, this could be good news. Getting up from the couch wouldn't be an option. You wouldn't have the muscle strength. Even breathing would be a near impossible task. Scientists have concluded that the maximum gravitational field that humans could adapt to is about 5 times the gravity of Earth. Well, now double that, and that would be your new normal. And you wouldn't be the only one feeling heavier. All that gravity would result in increased atmospheric pressure. Yeah, you'd feel the air pressing down on you. This would have severe environmental impacts. Water molecules would need more energy to escape their liquid form. That means the boiling temperature of water would be much higher than 100 degrees. And the freezing point would now be way below 0 degrees. It would be harder for you to make ice. And even the large chunks of ice, like icebergs, could melt away. And there would be disruptions beyond life on the surface of Earth. Introducing a massive planet into the solar system would create some serious instabilities. Our moon would experience extreme changes in tidal forces. This gravity could be strong enough to pull the moon apart into teeny tiny pieces. The only remnant you'd have left would be a new ring of debris forming around Earth. The sun would still be 250 times more massive than our new Earth, so Earth wouldn't steal any planets away, but our super Earth could have some effect on their orbit, just as Venus and Jupiter impact our orbit and climate today. The Earth would affect the orbits of other celestial bodies like asteroids. Our gravitational pull could be strong enough to eject these objects from the asteroid belt and set them on a collision path with you. And that would be bad news. Remember, you wouldn't be able to move a muscle to escape. So maybe it's better if Earth stays the same size as it is now. Some of the planets in our solar system are gigantic, but what if they got even bigger? Let's go up the planetary size chart and see what kind of chaos doubling the size of every planet would make. What would it be like to live on a super Earth? How big would Jupiter need to get to become a star? And would Pluto finally regain its planetary status? This is What If, and here's what would happen if all the planets doubled in size. Doubling the radius of every planet in the solar system would make each of them 8 times more massive, but you wouldn't need to worry about our solar system's great ball of fire getting bigger and hotter. For the sake of this experiment, let's keep the sun the same size it already is. But could the gravitational pull of a super Jupiter kickstart a chain of events that would result in the destruction of the solar system? Mercury. At its current size, the rocky planet closest to the sun is only slightly larger than our moon. Doubling it in size would make it nearly half as massive as Earth. And despite the fact that Mercury stopped being volcanically active 3.5 billion years ago, expanding its interior would mean all that internal energy would need to escape somewhere. So there could be some more explosive volcanic eruptions in Mercury's future. Venus. Venus is very similar in size to Earth, but one of its many differences is that its atmosphere is so thick that the surface pressure is 95 times stronger than our own. Venus's increased gravity would pull the atmosphere even closer to its surface. This could result in the atmosphere becoming so dense that walking through it would feel more like walking through water.
Except you'd really be walking through incredibly thick carbon dioxide. Earth. If Earth expanded to twice its size, the first big change you'd notice is that you'd feel a lot heavier. Within seconds, you'd go from your 75 kilogram weight to feeling like you were 150 kilograms. That would be because the force of gravity pulling on you would be twice as strong. You better hit the gym to strengthen up fast because this wouldn't be easy on your body. Your heart would need to work twice as hard to pump blood around, and pressure would build up on your joints. Jumping, flying, or sending rockets into space could become a thing of the past. You'd need much more fuel, power, and money to leave Earth's surface and travel through its even thicker atmosphere. Mars. Now, if the red planet ballooned to twice its size, there's a chance you would barely recognize it. What was once a dry, desolate place could eventually transform into a more Earth-like planet with oceans, rivers, and a thick atmosphere. Mars lost its magnetic field and then its atmosphere, likely because of chemical changes inside its core. But if the Martian core got bigger and hotter, it could restart the magnetic field. And that, in turn, would protect Mars from solar winds and give it a chance at kickstarting life. Jupiter. Doubled in size, Jupiter would continue to be an intimidatingly huge planet. It would stay 318 times larger than Earth and 2.5 times more massive than all the other planets combined. And the impact of this would be so huge that it would likely shift the actual center of our solar system. You see, the planets in our solar system don't exactly revolve around the sun. No, they orbit the common center of mass, or barycenter. And thanks to Jupiter's normal size, this barycenter is actually 48,000 kilometers away from the center of the sun. But doubled up, this point in space would move even further away from the sun. You'd see material from the asteroid belt being pulled toward Jupiter or further out into the solar system. But even this big, Jupiter wouldn't be massive enough to become a full-blown star. To do that, it would need to increase to 85 times its current mass. Though it wouldn't be far off from star status. At 13 times its original mass, Jupiter could become a brown dwarf star. Saturn. With a bigger Saturn, you could kiss its beautiful rings goodbye. The monumental increase in the planet's surface gravity would upset the balance of the ring materials, as well as Saturn's 5 small moons. They'd start falling towards its surface at a higher rate. Saturn is already slowly losing its rings. Every 30 minutes, material containing enough water to fill an Olympic-sized swimming pool falls down to the planet. Uranus. Now, beyond its added heft, not all that much would change for the ice giant Uranus way out on the edges of the solar system. It would continue holding the record for the stinkiest planet. If doubling Uranus's size would mean doubling the amount of hydrogen sulfide in its upper atmosphere, this stinker might spread an even stronger stench of rotten eggs. Ugh, I wouldn't want to go near this planet. Neptune. Neptune's fate wouldn't be too different from its giant frozen neighbor. Except Neptune's increased gravitational pull could eventually lead to the disappearance of some or all of the billions of icy objects located outside its orbit. Neptune has already swallowed the equivalent of 7 to 10 times the mass of Earth in material from the Kuiper Belt. Pluto. If Pluto doubled in size, well, it could be back on track to regain its official status as a planet. If its added mass and gravity could manage to pull away debris from its surrounding neighborhood, it might just be able to rejoin the rest of the family. Alright, so it's safe to say that all the planets doubling in size wouldn't exactly bring about a cataclysmic end of the solar system. It would, however, cause a little chaos.
This is our sun, our solar system, all the way out to the orbit of Neptune, the most distant planet from the sun. And here's the heliopause, which is the edge of the sun's solar wind and the beginning of interstellar space. And this humongous thing is the supermassive black hole known as Ton 618. It's about 40 billion times the mass of our sun. And if you think that's huge, well, think again. Because this is Phoenix A star, an absolute behemoth of a black hole. 100 billion times the mass of our sun. So, what would happen if these two collided? In this video, we're going to smash big things into each other. I mean, why stop at smashing two gargantuan black holes when you can do the same with the most massive stars, the largest planets, and even two galaxies? It's gonna get explosive. We'll start with the black holes. Now, to really get past the event horizon of just what happens when black holes collide, it helps to understand just how big they are. On the smallest end of the scale are stellar mass black holes. These are the remnants of huge stars that have burned through their hydrogen and helium and collapsed in on themselves. Their inescapably dense bodies will swallow anything that drifts by, including light. A stellar mass black hole can be smaller than the moon in size, but 100 times more massive than our sun. Now, on the other side of this scale, supermassive black holes lurk at the center of most galaxies. To give you a fuller sense of their scale, let's compare the Sun to one of the smallest supermassive black holes out there, J1601 plus 3113. It looks like it's roughly the same diameter as the Sun, but that little guy is 100,000 times more massive. Now, if we were to travel to the Circinus galaxy, we'd find a black hole weighing more than 1 million suns. This one would barely be able to squeeze between the orbits of Venus and Earth. Now, closer to home, in the middle of our own Milky Way, is Sagittarius A star, with a mass of 4.3 million suns. You get the idea. Black holes are massive. But these black holes are positively puny compared to the black hole in the center of Cygnus A, the most powerful source of radio waves in the universe. It dwarfs our entire solar system, generating unbelievable amounts of energy while it consumes endless amounts of spaceborne material. This monster weighs in at over 2 billion suns. But it's not the largest object out there. M87, the first black hole to be imaged directly, weighs over 5 billion suns. And all of them are just bugs compared to Ton 618, the supermassive black hole so large it would engulf our solar system beyond the furthest reaches of our unexplored Oort cloud. Ton 618 has a mass of over 66 billion suns. You'd think it's an absolute monster, a true contender for the heavyweight championship belt, but it's not. Because scientists have found Phoenix A star, about 8 billion light years away from us. This thing is ancient. Black holes this big? It didn't just happen because a star ran out of helium last month. Black holes like this could be primordial, some of the first black holes forged after the Big Bang. And it's growing, devouring an entire sun's worth of mass every week. So, what would happen if Ton 618 collided with the black hole at the center of Phoenix A? Well, they would send ripples through space-time. But don't imagine their collision like a car crash. This would be a dance. Put these two leviathans in the same galaxy and they would start to circle slowly. Over millions of years, they'd spiral toward each other, drawn by the undeniable power of gravity. Two singularities which, once they pass a certain point, are bound to each other forever. They would fall into an ever-tightening orbit until they're infinitely close and still infinitely far. They may do this for eons, and then they reach a critical distance. The black holes begin to distort each other's shape. For an instant, they're two shapeless voids morphing, stretching toward each other in the emptiness of space. After millennia, when they finally touch, the long-anticipated connection happens fast. And then, an incalculable cosmic bloop. That's right, bloop. Two of the largest objects in the universe combine to make one. One stupendous, supermassive black hole, bigger and more massive than anything we can conceive. Hundreds of billions of solar masses merging, sending out so much energy it shimmers across the universe in the form of gravitational waves for billions of years. And then they go on consuming everything in their path, like nothing big happened. Though something big definitely happened. Now, what else is out there in the universe colliding that's even bigger than a black hole? Well, how about an entire galaxy? Now, we know that there are entire galactic clusters out there like El Gordo smashing into each other with incredible violence. It happens more often than you want to imagine. And it's going to happen to our own galaxy, the Milky Way. Yeah, in about 5 billion years, we're going to collide with the nearby Andromeda galaxy. So, what happens when two galaxies smash into each other? Well, if black holes colliding looks like soap bubbles popping, watching two galaxies collide is more like watching two ghosts run into each other in the hall. I know that sounds crazy, but stay with me here. It's a pretty good metaphor. Galactic mergers are a process that takes billions of years, fueled by the power of gravity. Right now, gravity is already pulling the Milky Way and the Andromeda galaxy toward each other, and even though they won't make contact for nearly 4 billion years, the two galaxies are being drawn together across millions of light years of open space. Eventually, they'll collide, stars torn from their regular orbits, ripped apart by extreme tidal forces, dust and gas scattered everywhere. For the Milky Way, a large barred spiral galaxy with over 100 billion stars, its long, whirling arms will shiver and distend. Both galaxies will warp and distort, the forces of the collisions tearing apart those billion-year-old spirals. As they loop back toward each other, they'll lose their shape and eventually they collide, or, well, merge. Stars will be scattered and redispersed throughout the body of a much larger, brand new galaxy. And the black holes at the center of the galaxies, remember Sagittarius A star? Well, at some point, they'll bloop together. Now, while it looks cataclysmic, remember when I said it was more like watching two ghosts hit each other? Well, that's because most of the billions of stars involved in the collision won't hit each other. There's hardly any casualties. Space is big, and although there are more than 100 billion stars in each galaxy, they're an average of 5 whole light years apart. That's an average of 47 trillion kilometers, 29 trillion miles between each star. So, while the merger of a trillion superheated balls of glowing plasma rearranging themselves is a spectacular billion-year watch party, it's actually a comparatively non-destructive process. It'll be rare if any stars or planets hit each other. It does happen, and we'll talk about that in a minute, but mostly it's like two ghosts passing in the hall. See? Now, what if some of the stars or giant planets in those galaxies, or any galaxy really, did hit each other? Well, that gets very interesting. Let's talk about giant planets colliding first. The biggest planets are gas giants, like the jumbo gas giant in our solar system, Jupiter. While Jupiter is a huge planet, and you could fit over 1,000 Earths inside it, it's far from being the largest planet out there. In just the last couple of decades, scientists have discovered 2 of the absolutely chonkiest gas giant planets in the universe. Naturally, we wondered, what would happen if those 2 big boys smashed into each other? Well, if we're going after metaphors in this video, these are the sumo wrestlers. In this corner, rocks 42BB, an extremely young gas giant, roughly the same diameter as Jupiter, but 9 times more massive. And on the other side of the ring, TOI 4603b, almost the same radius, but weighs in with a planetary mass of 12.89 Jupiters. That is a lot of Jupiters. This massive planet is almost massive enough to be a sort of star. So, what happens if they run into each other? Well, it starts out simple enough. These 2 titans crash into each other at typical solar system speeds. They're made of helium and hydrogen. They're gas giants. It's the biggest whoomph in history. Sure, all kinds of gas and liquid hydrogen blast into space, but in short, these 2 giant gas bags plow into each other and merge. And that's when something interesting happens. The 2 planets become one entity and tip the scales beyond what's actually a planet. They blast past the critical weight limit of 13 Jupiters and enter into new territory. They become a brown dwarf. Not quite a planet anymore, not quite a star. These tweens of the universe have masses between 13 and 80 times Jupiter's mass. Some call them failed stars because they don't have the necessary mass to ignite nuclear fusion with hydrogen, but they do have enough mass to ignite nuclear fusion with deuterium atoms. So they don't quite shine, but they often generate their own heat and glow. Not with light visible to the human eye, but with an infrared light. Now, it's possible that if these brown dwarfs draw in enough mass or bump into another planet or 2, they'll cross the 80 Jupiter masses line and eventually turn into stars. But in the moments after they collide, rocks and TOI become a brand spanking new brown dwarf. Now, speaking of stars, what would happen if 2 stars collided? I'm not just talking tiny stars that barely cross the threshold to stardom. How about A-level, Beyonce wattage megastars? Stars like BAT 99-98, a colossal star in the Tarantula Nebula with a mass over 200 times the mass of our sun and 5 million times brighter. This thing is hot, young, and pumping out the energy, burning through mass. It's bound to go supernova sooner or later. It's so big that if we replaced our sun with it, we'd basically all go blind immediately. The radiation and solar wind would strip all life off planet Earth, evaporate the oceans, and melt the Earth's crust before its gravity pulled us into a plunge orbit and swallowed our planet whole within a handful of days. It's huge! It's similar in stature to Eta Carina out in the Homunculus Nebula. Eta Carina is actually a binary star pair, but the big sibling is Eta Carinae A, a luminous blue star. It's so big and burning so much energy that it's actually destroying the nebula around it. It's the only known star to produce an ultraviolet astrophysical laser. Yeah, a laser. So, what would happen if these two intensely energetic stars collided? Trust me, this is not a dance or ghosts in the hall or a cosmic bloop. This will get explosive. There are basically two things that can happen. Now, if the stars impact each other at a slow enough velocity, say one sidles up beside the other, well then they'll casually merge, creating a new, even brighter, more luminous star called a blue straggler, which offhand is a great name for a blues band. That one's free. If you start a nerdcore space blues band called the Blue Straggler, well, send in a copy of your album. We'll plug it on the channel. For real, we're understandably supportive of any band with a penchant for space themes. Really, hit us up. Now, out in the real universe, a blue straggler is an extremely bright blue star that stands apart from the rest of the stars in its neighboring star cluster. It acts young because it's chock full of fuel compared to the nearby older stars reaching the end of their lives, turning into red giants. So, if these two Brontosaurus-sized stars bumbled into each other, they'd essentially turn into one larger, brighter, bluer star. But what happens if they don't just amble up on each other? What if BAT 99-98 and Eta Carinae, two of the biggest stars in the universe, wound up in a head-on, high-velocity Autobahn-style collision? Imagine Eta Carinae A tearing through the Tarantula Nebula on a high-speed collision course. It closes on BAT 99-98, gravity pulling them toward each other at incredible speeds. And when they finally collide, the collision causes a cataclysmic explosion so huge, so devastating, the impact completely obliterates both stars, destroying them entirely. The speed and power of the impact spraying star guts, or hydrogen as we call it, so far over interstellar space that it'll never be able to reform. Complete annihilation. No woomph, no bloop, just complete savage havoc that wipes both stars off the celestial map. Now, that's a collision. And speaking of interstellar space and collisions, ever heard of that interstellar object, 3I Atlas? Well, it's in our neighborhood right now, so maybe you're wondering, what would happen if it collided with Earth? Well, that's a story for another What If. If suddenly you started to shrink in size, how long would it be until you became as small as a particle of dust? Why would things look different to your eyes? And why should you stay away from these grabby things? Today, you'll be scaling down by 1 centimeter every second, from human-sized all the way down to the size of a subatomic particle. Okay, quick brain fact. Did you know that curiosity is one of the only emotions that actually rewires your brain in real time? The moment you lean in to understand something, like you are right now, your neurons start building new pathways. When you watch curiosity-fueled content like this, your brain treats it like active learning, decoding and making sense of new ideas just like it does when you solve a puzzle. So, watching our shows is literally good for your brain. Well, that's why we launched the Popular Science Fast channel, where you can stream all our shows 24/7. Tune in any time of day and you'll find mind-bending science from us and from some of the world's leading creators, including NASA's spaceflight, Hacksmith, and Complexly. Plus, live rocket launches, documentaries, and deep dive specials. It's basically a non-stop feed of curiosity, always on, always learning. We're currently available on 10 different platforms, including Vizio, Roku, and Plex, but we're just getting started. We're reaching tens of millions of homes and streaming devices all over the globe, and that audience keeps growing every month. And the channel just keeps evolving. We're adding brand new series and specials monthly, from breakthroughs in tech to space exploration coverage you can watch live. It's a front row seat to the new space race, alongside a 150-year-old legacy of science storytelling